This is officially the first time I've ever started an episode of No Filter with the sound of a big cat roaring. But no, I'm sorry, this is not an interview with Carol Baskin. This is so much better than that, and the cheetah sound will make sense in a moment. I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter. Imagine this, if you will. You first become bulimic age 10, when the world told you that you were too much. You continue to numb your feelings as you get older with alcohol, with drugs, with sex, until you find yourself lying on the bathroom floor, age 25, clutching a positive pregnancy test and wondering how the hell you got there. No matter, you know with unwavering certainty that you want to become a mother to this baby, even though to an outsider, and even especially to you, it looks like a really terrible choice. You tell the baby's father, he's into the idea, and on that very day, you stop drinking and get sober. You never drink or take drugs again. You get married. You have that baby, and then 2 more in rapid succession. And then you feel like you're drowning in the weight of expectation from the world and from yourself, all the expectations of what a woman should be, what a mother should be, what a wife should be. And then you start writing a blog to process some of these feelings. You find your voice and a following, many of them from the same strong Christian conservative faith in which you were raised. You land a book deal. You find out your husband has been cheating on you since the start of your marriage. You consider leaving, but you stay because you feel like you should. For your children. And because he's a good man, except for, the cheating. You work through it together. You write another book about repairing your marriage, and Oprah picks it for her book club. And then, you fall in love with an Olympic athlete right before your book is due to be launched. Her name is Abby Wambach. This is the story of Glennon Doyle, truth teller, feminist, best-selling author many times over, love warrior, champion of women, and her new book, Untamed, is about how she, like so many of us, became accidentally domesticated and how she broke free. It's the book that hundreds of thousands of women have been reading in isolation, and it will not budge from the top of the bestseller lists, even though Corona forced Glennon to cancel her book tour and hunker down with her wife and kids and try to promote it over the phone. Glennon is a force, and I love her madly. Our previous conversations on No Filter have been wildly popular, so I know you'll be excited to hear from her again. We had a couple of technical difficulties, and there's something pretty funny that happens partway through this podcast, but we'll get to that in a moment. I started off by asking Glennon to tell me about the meeting she had sitting around a table about to launch Love Warrior, the book where she told the world about how she repaired her marriage. Oh, and just a warning, the language in this episode's a little bit salty.
When I decided to tell my team that just several weeks before the launch of Love Warrior, which was supposed to be one of the biggest books of the year, it was the tagline that they had made up was an epic marriage redemption story. Mm-hmm. And then I fell in love with Abby. Just weeks before, months before, I don't know. You know how I'm with numbers. Sometime right before the launch. And it was so wild and it was a hard, tricky decision to either stay in my broken marriage or to divorce and pursue a love with Abby. And it didn't feel so much like a decision between people, like, do I stay with Craig or do I go with Abby? It felt more like, do I abandon myself or do I not? Right? Because it wasn't just about falling in love with Abby. It was that I knew deep in my bones, the way women know, that while I was desperately trying to make my marriage be okay, the truth was that I was angry all the time. And I just had this constant ache, this just longing for a truer, deeper, realer love. And when I met Abby, I don't know, it was like this self that I hadn't heard from for decades just like rose up and just shook the bars of all of my cages, And so the decision really did seem, okay, now I will have to decide whether to abandon myself or abandon everyone's expectations of me. And one of major expectations of me was that I would toe the line and get this book out into the world and do whatever I needed to do to keep, what I would have called a secret, but they were calling private.
Well, just, just keep it private. You don't have to tell people everything.
Like, it's not lying if you just don't mention it. If you just talk about your marriage redemption book and don't mention that you're divorcing. Like, I feel like you're talking fast, but I feel like that's still lying. Thank God, Mia, that I just had this practice since I got sober, which really started with my sobriety, which was really just, one of the things I talk about in the book a lot, which is just this idea of no, you just start with the truth and you just let it all burn. Because whatever's in front of you that you think you can't live without, or you think you have to do, if the truth can burn it down, then it was supposed to be burnt out. They told me, one of my dearest and most trusted people in my team, because these aren't a bunch of faceless, nameless people. These are people that I have been working with for a decade. I have a team and I keep a team, right? I followed my one editor to 3 different publishing houses. So these are my people. Mm. And one of them said, okay, I hear you. You can do this. You can announce that you're divorcing and in love with Abby, but it'll be career suicide. Like, just know that you're committing career suicide, right? Because they thought nobody would buy the book if nobody's going to buy a book about marriage redemption from a woman who's divorcing. Back then, this is not so true anymore, but back then, I think people forget now that my base of readers was very largely Christian based. Mm. Okay. So this curveball of also now I'm in love with a woman, they just thought it was going to be a bloodbath. So I remember sitting with my sister and just saying, well, okay, then I see, I'm counting the cost of this, what this could mean. And I guess if it's going to come down to me choosing career suicide or soul suicide, which is what I will be doing because what it sounds easy, like, oh, just keep it private. But what that really would have meant was that I would have had to go on the road, speak on stages to the people who I have known and loved, my community online for a decade, and hide the most important part of my life. So that was just there was no chance that I could do that. Luckily, one of the people who was most involved in this book was Oprah. Okay, because she had picked it for her book club. So when I couldn't make any headway with all of the boss people in New York, I just called Oprah. And I said,
that's what I do when I have a problem.
Right. As you do.
Yeah.
Yes, as you do. Because I knew that she had the most invested in the book, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was her book. Okay. So what I really needed was her blessing.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Was that a scary phone call to make?
Uh-huh. Yes. Very scary. Not as scary as the one I'm calling my mom. Yeah. But maybe second. Maybe second to my mom, then Oprah, then the world.
Imagine if someone had told like 25-year-old Glennon, one day you're going to call Oprah and tell her this, that
you're marrying Abby Wambach. Like,
yeah.
No. I would have never believed that.
And you're like, cool, I look forward to that day.
Yeah. Certainly when I was fall down drunk, when I was 25 and barely alive, I would not have believed that. No. So I had a beautiful conversation with her. She was so surprised and so honest. And at the end of the conversation, she said, here's the thing I know about the truth is it's always where you end up. No matter where you start, you always end up at the truth. So I agree with you. I think you should just start with the truth. So then I got to call everybody back and say, well, Oprah said.
You played the Oprah card and no one has a match for that.
It's the time I have, but I did it then. And everybody was like, oh, yes. Well, I too think that's a great idea.
The truth. I've always been a big believer in the truth.
Exactly.
I know what we'll do. We'll start with the truth.
Right. It's because I wanted to say. I just, So you know what happened next. I mean, I did announce that Abby and I's love and Craig and I's divorce publicly, and people were better than we had given them credit for. I mean, there has been all kinds of nastiness and hate from the same kinds of people that you would expect it from, that I already expected it from. But overall, people have received our family story with such grace and connection and love, and the book did fine. Everybody was fine.
More than fine. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that was that. And then I went home and after the tour, and we had to start dealing with the world was one thing. That was nothing compared to actually dealing with the pain in our own family and going through the pain of divorce with the kids, and telling our small circles was way more brutal and beautiful than the world stuff is kind of not as real as doing divorce and remarriage with your small group of people. That was intense.
Meeting Abby was really the beginning of your, I'm going to call it an untamed journey. Even though journey has become such a hackneyed word, it was sort of the awakening of the cheetah inside you. And you start the book with a story about a cheetah called Tabitha.
The way that I would describe my previous marriage is that I was in a broken marriage with a good man. And that is a very tricky place for a woman to be, because we're supposed to be grateful, right? I'm supposed to be grateful. I'm supposed to be happy. This is good enough. This is so much better than so many other people have it. What's wrong with me? Like, why am I angry? Why do I long for more? Just that feeling of wondering why you just can't be grateful for what you have, right? And I was looking for, as writers do, I was constantly looking for something in the world that I could see that would help me explain this feeling inside that was invisible. And I took my girls to a safari park, okay, to this zoo. We all go to the cheetah run. Okay, there's this thing called the cheetah run. And so we went to the cheetah run, we lined up inside. This zookeeper steps out and she's holding the leash to a yellow lab. Okay, so the first thought, Mia, I was like, okay, I'm not a scientist, but if this lady tries to tell my kids that lab is a cheetah, I'm getting my $7. Right? So there's no spots. Like, I don't know animals. That's definitely not a cheetah.
Labradors, cheetahs, different species.
Yeah. So the zookeeper says, okay, do you all think this is Tabitha the cheetah? And they all say, no. And she says, you're right. This is Minnie. This is a Labrador retriever, and this is Tabitha's best friend. And since Tabitha was born in captivity, we raised Minnie alongside Tabitha to tame Tabitha. So now Tabitha wants to do everything that Minnie does. So Tabitha's in that cage right there. She's going to watch Minnie run the cheetah run, and then she's going to do it. So we all stand there. We watch Minnie the lab line up on the starting line. This Jeep with this dirty pink stuffed animal bunny was tied to the Jeep. Minnie takes off after the pink bunny. Everyone's clapping for the lab. Then the zookeeper opens up Tabitha's cage, and this just ridiculously terrifying, like humongous, powerful, majestic animal just stalks out of this cage. So beautiful. But then she lines up on the starting line. The Jeep takes off, and this gorgeous, regal, powerful creature chases this dirty pink bunny, makes it across the finish line. The crowd cheers, and the zookeeper throws her this store-bought steak, and she just lays down in the dirt and eats it. And everybody's clapping and clapping, and I'm just sitting there going, oh my God. This is the proof I needed. If a mighty, powerful, wild animal like a cheetah can be tamed to chase dirty pink bunnies all day, can be tamed into forgetting her wild, forgetting her power, then so can a woman. Right? I just looked at her and thought, that, exactly what I just saw, is why I'm so tired. It's why I'm so bored. It's why I'm angry. It's why I have this longing, because I spend all day chasing dirty pink bunnies in the form of every expectation, every ideal, everything a woman should be, everything a mother should be, all of these dirty pink bunnies that I was tamed to believe are the answer, right? That I was tamed to believe would make me happy. So it was really just, if I'm going to remember who I am, the first thing I have to do is stop chasing and return to my wild. This beautiful thing happened next, which is that the zookeeper put Tabitha in this like field, this small field, so she could keep talking to the kids. And she said, does anyone have any questions? And this little girl raised her hand and she said, does Tabitha miss the wild? Is Tabitha sad? And the zookeeper said, no, she doesn't know any different. She was born here, remember. This is a good life for her. She's safe here. And while she's saying that, Tish, my daughter, nudges me and she points towards Tabitha in that small field. And I'm telling you that something about just having a little more freedom changed her entire posture, changed her entire energy. She was stalking the field. She looked wild again. Tish said, Mom, she turned wild again. And that's how she looked, right? She was looking past the fence. And it was like, okay, I figured if you could ask this cheetah right now, if we could figure out how to communicate with Tabitha the cheetah, and we would say to her right now, like, what are you thinking? She would say the same thing a woman would say. She would say, I don't know. I just have this discontent. I just have this restlessness. I just have this relentless hunch that I was meant for more than this. I just have this idea that I was meant to sleep under star-filled skies and that I was meant to run and hunt and kill. I have this idea that it was all supposed to be more beautiful than this. But then she'd look back at her cage, look back at the laughing spectators. She'd look at Minnie and she'd go, oh yeah, but this is all there is. This is all I've ever known. This is all there is. This is reality, that cage. That's all there is. And that so much reminds me of the women that I talk to, who all they've ever seen or known are particular, this is what a woman is, this is what a mother is, this is what a wife is, this is what a Christian is, and they're trying to mold themselves into these ready-made cultural structures. And deep inside, they know they have a longing that they were made for more or bigger or wider than those cages. But the whole world gaslights women, right? Just like gaslighting of Tabitha, because the zookeepers would say to Tabitha, no, Tabitha, what are you talking about? You're a lab, which is what the whole world does to women. No, you're crazy. You're emotional. Just be grateful, right? So that's why I started the book with, you are not crazy. You are a goddamn cheetah.
Your description of Tabitha makes me think about what you write about being underwhelmed and overwhelmed at the same time. That feeling of being overwhelmed and underwhelmed at the same time, that was such an aha moment for me. Can you explain what that feels like for women and what that might look like in a woman's life?
Yeah, well, it's just the everyday life of women. It's like we're exhausted, man. Trying to be a perfect mom is a setup. Of course, you can't do it. There's a reason. Like it's absolutely impossible. The target is always shifting. Usually, part of being a perfect mother, has to do with not being human. If you ask like a woman to describe what the perfect mother is, she will describe to you a robot. Okay, it's a robot. It's like someone who just wakes up and is smiling and like her children are full of being crazy and she's like, oh, it's okay. And she never gets angry and she never breaks down and she doesn't have a selfish desire in her body. Like we literally are not describing human beings. Okay.
Yeah.
And so we're androids. Like that's what you think we should be, is an android, And so we're chasing these impossible ideals all day. And that makes us overwhelmed. We're exhausted. We're constantly trying to be perfect. We're trying to be the perfect wives, the perfect employees, the perfect mothers. None of it exists. It's a wild goose chase. It's chasing dirty pink bunnies, but we're totally exhausted by it because there's no end to it. So we're overwhelmed by the chase of the wrong thing. We're underwhelmed because we haven't even stopped chasing those ideals for long enough to figure out what we really want to be chasing. When we return to ourselves, when we actually stop deferring to cultural expectations and cultural ideals, which will always just in one way or another tell a woman, never stop and disappear. That's it. That's just a million different forms of those two messages.
Never
Right?
stop, and you must disappear.
Disappear. Get smaller.
Don't be loud. Don't be big. Don't be angry. Don't be
No,
difficult.
right.
Don't be unlikable.
Don't be ambitious. Don't be big. Don't be big. Don't take up space. Don't be big with your voice. Don't be big with your dreams. Don't be big with your body. Don't be big with your ambition. Don't be big. Disappear. Don't be big with yourself. I mean, the ideal mother, I almost, Mia, didn't. I almost abandoned myself. Like, I came very close to deciding, I will stay in this broken marriage. I will let the love of my life go. So I was tamed so completely to believe that a good mother just never hurts her children, right? That a good mother does this thing we say, which we'll get into in a second, because it actually makes no sense. We just say it over and over again without analyzing it. I need to put my children's needs before my own. Until one day I was braiding Tish's hair, and she's my most sensitive kid. She's the one that I thought's going to go over the damn edge if I do this, right? And I was looking at her and I was thinking, I am staying in this marriage. I'm staying in this broken marriage for her. But would I want this marriage for her? And why am I modeling bad love and calling that good mothering? Makes no sense at all. But there's a simple answer to why we do that. And that is because we have been trained to believe that a good mother is a martyr. That the best mothers just slowly die, that they just bury themselves under, they bury their feelings, they bury their desire, they bury their personalities, they bury their emotions in honor of their children, which is so unbelievable. Like, what if our job as mothers is not to slowly die for our children, but to show them how to bravely live, right? If we martyr ourselves by disappearing for our children, then that is an unbelievably negative and heavy legacy to pass down to them. How many of us now are fighting to give ourselves permission to exist because we were raised by martyr mothers, right? Because we were taught the epitome of love is to disappear. And then if you don't disappear in honor of your family, you are selfish. That's the legacy that's passed down by martyr mothers. That's why Carl Jung said there is no greater burden on a child than the unlived life of a parent.
But where do you draw the line there? Because, you know, I know that a lot of women go, put their hands up when you say that. And it's funny, I was interviewing last week a former Prime Minister of Australia. His name's Malcolm Turnbull, and we were talking about how his mother, who was probably of the era of, or maybe she was a bit younger, but that sort of first wave feminism, and she just took off to another country when he was about 9 years old and left him with his father and took all the money and just went and followed a new relationship and pretty much never came back. Got married to another guy in New Zealand. Is there a sort of a qualifier within that idea of we shouldn't be martyrs in that we should also not be dickheads?
Right. Well, listen, I mean, that's like, those kind of arguments always make me laugh because that's like the slippery slope argument.
Yeah.
Like, bring up the slippery slope argument to me. Like, I can't, don't, take an hour to work out because then what are you going to do? Run away with the circus? Like, no, not a freaking idiot. Okay. Like, here's the deal. All I'm talking about is I do not believe, that's abandonment. Like, yes. That's a whole nother, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is a woman who was hiding part of herself, right? So that she was slowly dying inside of the marriage. Okay. And what we're talking about is a mother's needs when she's healthy. Okay. That's not healthy. Like, that's not a healthy woman, right? What you're just talking about, full abandonment of a child is not something that a sane, healthy mother does. But I do believe that what a sane, healthy mother does is figure out, what does my child need? What does my child need? Every mother wants to say, what does my child need? What I believe my child needs is permission to be her full self throughout her entire life. And I believe that the only way my daughter will feel the wild, full permission of living her true self is if she sees her mother do it.
Yeah.
So that's it. Like, I can't argue. I can never and won't compete with the slippery slope. Like, now we're taking care of ourselves and then we're going to be on the streets murdering people. Like, I just think that women are better and smarter than that, right? There will always be outliers.
And that's why, you know, your book, my mum was sort of revolutionized by Germaine Greer's The Female Eunuch, but she was a single mum at the time and she had a little boy, and she said she loved the book until she got to the part where Germaine Greer said the only way women can be unshackled by the patriarchy is by leaving their families, by walking out on their children and leaving their marriages and going out and putting themselves first in that way. And she said at that point she threw the book across the room because she said, and Germaine Greer didn't have children. And my mum was like, I don't want to leave my child. Like, do I have to choose? Do I have to choose between being a mother and having a life? Like, that's not fair, which is why in Untamed, you braid it through. And I've heard you talk about before that our role as mothers is not to, I've quoted this so many times, is not to walk our children around the fire. Forgive me if I'm mangling your words, but it's to hold their hand and walk them through the fire and show them that they can get to the other side. Can you explain what you mean by that and how you navigated it in breaking up their parents' marriage in your own family?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that I think that every culture and every generation of parents gets a different memo of like, this is how you're supposed to parent, right?
It's one of my favorite chapters of the book. I was actually going to ask you to read that. Can you go to page, have you got a copy there?
Here we go, 153 memos. Okay. Every generation of parents receives a memo when they leave the hospital with their baby. My grandmother's memo, here's the baby, take it home and let it grow. Let it speak when spoken to. Carry on with your lives. My mother's memo, here's your baby. Take her home and then get together each day with your friends who also have these things. Drink tab before 4 o'clock and wine coolers after. Smoke cigarettes, play cards. Lock the kids out of the house and let them in only to eat and sleep. Lucky bastards. Our memo. Here is your baby. This is the moment you have been waiting for your entire life, when the hole in your heart is filled and you finally become complete. If, after I put this child in your arms, you sense anything other than utter fulfillment, seek counseling immediately. After you hang up with the counselor, call a tutor. Since we have been speaking for 3 minutes, your child is already behind. Have you registered her for Mandarin classes yet? I see. Poor child. Listen closely. Parent is no longer a noun. Those days are gone. Parent is now a verb, something you do ceaselessly. Think of the verb parent as synonymous with protect, shield, cover, deflect, fix, plan, and obsess. Parenting will require all of you. Please parent with your mind, body, and soul. Parenting is your new religion within which you will find salvation. Your child is your savior. Convert or be damned. We will wait while you cancel all other life endeavors. Thank you. And the next sentence is all of it. Now, the goal of parenting is never allow anything difficult to happen to your child.
That is the memo that we got, Glennon. It is. And even though I think of myself as evolved, I still find that. I try to do that with my children. I find that their pain or their disappointment feels sometimes unbearable to me.
Yeah, that's because we also, as a generation, never learned how to deal with pain. Like, we growing up did not learn, everyone forgot to teach us that, okay? They taught us all other kinds of ridiculous, crappy stuff. Like, I know how to identify all 3 different columns from ancient Rome. I can tell you that, but I don't know how to deal with grief. Okay, so thanks a lot, education. Like, the things that they don't teach us about how to deal with hard feelings, right? How to use pain, how to withstand pain, how to allow pain to transform you into the next version of the thing you're supposed to be, because that's what pain does. It's alchemy. When we sit with it long enough, it is the fuel that turns us into the next version of ourselves. And so we didn't learn how to do that. So then we pass it on to our kids. We never let anything happen to them. We never let anyone be mean to them. We never let them lose anything. They have to get participation trophies for everything, right? Their teachers tell us that they mess up and we say, no, they didn't. Like, we don't let a raindrop fall on their head.
Mm.
And yeah, this is why our kids suck. Okay. Our
Yeah.
kids, they do. They, I mean, bless their hearts. People who don't suck are people who have lost, right? And so they have learned how to lose with dignity. And people who don't suck are people who have been hurt and sat with that hurt so that they don't want to cause hurt to another person, right? People who do not suck are people who have failed and who have sat with the consequences of failure so that they know how to pull themselves up again. People who do not suck are not people who have never had to overcome anything. They're people who have overcome and overcome and overcome, right? So we are stealing from our children the one thing that will allow them to become the people we dream of, right? Which is pain. For sure, the way I used to raise Tish. And she's my most sensitive, but really all of them. I mean, I thought I was doing well if nothing happened to them.
Yeah.
Right? So herein lies the dilemma of, do I continue to live a version of myself that is not real, that is fake, where I'm half alive, in order to protect her from pain? Or do I stop pretending? Do I go for this thing that I think could be one of my few big chances in life at real, authentic joy and freedom? And do I just walk them through that pain? Do I let their hearts break? Do I show them that sometimes life hurts, right? And that sometimes we have to tell people who we really are, even when that makes them really uncomfortable, even when that hurts them, right? I was told, Mia, that the ultimate failure for a woman was divorce. Like, that's what I was raised with. Like, in the Catholic tradition, in a patriarchal tradition, like, you get married and then success is that marriage stays together forever.
Mm-hmm. Until you both die. Literally, until as long as we both shall live.
Regardless of what's actually happening in that marriage.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're both dying, success is stay together till you're dead. Awesome. Awesome plan, right? And failure is a divorce.
Yeah.
Even if that divorce is based on truth and respect and deep abiding love. So I started looking at that memo that I got about success and failure within marriage. And I started noticing, Mia, that a whole lot of my friends were in marriages that were together and they were effing miserable, right? There was nothing successful about their marriage except that they hadn't divorced. And I noticed a lot of my friends who changed their family structure and who seemed and felt vibrant and whole. So I just threw away the cultural definitions of what success is. I no longer believe that your marriage is a success just because it's still together when you're both dying inside. Like, sorry, don't see it as a success. And do not for 1 second see your family as a failure. If in order to honor every single person's full humanity in that family, you had to change and break and evolve your structures, right? I think the definition of a whole family is any family, regardless of structure, in which each person is able to bring her full self to the family table, knowing that she will be both held by the group and free to be herself.
You even
right?
talk about the language it being about broken families. And when I said before, I talked about breaking up your marriage.
Yeah.
It's really deeply embedded in us, isn't it? And I've heard you often say, you fixed your family.
Yes. And oh my God, what you learn after, we also are trained to believe that if we do what is true and beautiful for us, that our families, that it's bad for everyone else, right? And you will hear
selfish.
that all the time.
Yeah, selfish.
It's selfish. It's selfish, and what's implied in that is that it might be good for you, but it's bad for everyone else. What I know about people who don't buy into that, who, by the way, are the deepest, the people who I'm thinking of right now, and I'm included, are the most wildly, deeply in love with their children human beings. Okay, the thought of, it's just like saying like, oh, a woman who's true to herself is going to run off and abandon her children. It's a new version of like feminists are all witches and going to kill their babies and going to kill, like, it's just like more, it's more of that language. It's unnuanced. What I know is that there's no such thing as one-way liberation. I decided that I was no longer going to pretend, and that I figured out that there's no, prize at the end for the woman who suffered the most, right? I want to quit competing for that. I don't believe there's a trophy. I decided to be true to myself, to tell Craig the truth, even though it was earth-shattering, right? To follow truth. I decided that, what Liz told me at the time, which I will never forget, she said, every truth you tell, even if it makes people uncomfortable, is a kindness. And every untruth that you hold, no matter how comfortable it makes other people, is an unkindness, right? And I believe that. What I know is that while the truth that I brought to my family caused all kinds of change, and in the beginning, so much pain, and it was so hard for my kids, divorce is so hard on kids. And there's nobody in my family who wouldn't tell you that our family is such a truer, more beautiful version. We are who we were supposed to be right now. And Craig would tell you that a million times over. I mean, the amazing thing is, like, people actually believe, so I'm miserable in this marriage, and so the best thing I can do for my spouse is just not say anything and stay. Like, if you're miserable in your marriage, likely the other person's not having a ball either, right?
What about the advice that counselor gave you about, you've got a chapter in the book called Blowjobs.
Yeah.
Do share.
Yeah, I will. So that woman, I had been seeing her for a long time, actually. She was my therapist, the therapist that I wrote about in Love Warrior. And I think she was just really, really invested in our marriage staying together for lots of reasons. But when I finally got up the nerve to go into her office and say, okay, here's the deal. I am in love with a woman. Her name is Abby. She just went white, and she said something dismissive. And I just panicked, and I said, okay, if I can't have this, then I just have to never sleep with him again. Like, I'm slowly dying inside every time, and I'm so angry, and I just can't do it again. And she looked at me and she said, well, first of all, she said, this is not real. This is not real.
Oh.
Okay. She said, this is a distraction. This is not real. This is a distraction. Now, this is just the universal gaslighting of women, right? Like, no matter what you're saying, you can be saying, this is me. This is how I feel. This is who I am. And the world some version will say, no, you're not. No, it isn't. This isn't real. And then she said, okay, well, have you considered blowjobs? A lot of women consider those to be less intimate.
Ooh, that's a version of a pink bunny that I hadn't thought about.
Yeah. But, like, I'm so grateful for that moment. And actually, it's embarrassing to admit, Mia, but, like, of course, I just ended the story after that in the book. I didn't write about the next several hours, which I was really like, oh, okay. Like, I really went home thinking, okay, maybe this is not real. Like, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I should just give blowjob. Like, and I think it had to be that dramatic, what she said. It had to be that dramatic for me to say, oh, I see what the world's going to tell me to do. Right?
Give blowjobs.
Yes. That my truth, that my feelings, none of that is as important as accommodating him, as not rocking the boat. So, I mean, one of the great joys of my life is that I will never give a blowjob again.
You need to put that on a T-shirt, my friend.
Yes. My version of heaven. Sister.
Blowjob's done.
And also, Mia, listen, I need to say this. Like, the funny part of this is, I mean, Untamed, we're talking about, like, all these wild things, breaking up your family and whatever. The love, like, this is the difference, I think, in this wave of feminism, is that this is a feminism that is not divorced from passionate, deep, familial love, right? Like, this is all part of it. That is who I am.
Oh, it's soaked in that. That is
entire
you.
about love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most of my friends who have this longing inside of them, by the way, they want different relationships with the same partner, right?
Yeah.
Like that, so many of the women I know have a longing for something truer or deeper. But it doesn't have to do with leaving. It has to do with staying and being able to tell the truth of who you are and what you need and what you want in a relationship.
One of the most extraordinary parts of your story is the part where you and Abby fell in love, decided to end your respective relationships, told your families, and still hadn't spent a moment alone in a room together.
Girl, I mean, when I think about this time, because, yeah, so we met at a library convention, very sexy. And we spent a couple hours in that room with 1,000 librarians, literally, and 10 other writers. And then
Sexy
we left
times.
and then we left each other. I went to Naples. She went back to Portland. And we just started writing each other letters. And we fell deeply in love through letters. And I got to the point where I am just obsessed with, I think I figured out early on that all that really matters is my sobriety, because everything beautiful comes from my sobriety, right? All my relationships, everything that I do is based on the fact of my sobriety. And my number one rule for sobriety is no shame. And the only way to avoid shame is to just tell the truth, right? To not keep things bottled up inside. So as soon as I admitted to myself, okay, whatever this thing is with Abby is real, it's deep, I have uncovered a part of myself that I have been missing for a very long time, is when I knew I had to tell Craig, like right away. Because I figured out, like, I don't owe him, we haven't even mentioned this, but because I don't like to mention this as much anymore, because I realized that I started using it as an excuse, like a permission slip for why I was allowed to get out of my marriage. But there was a lot of infidelity in that marriage. And I knew how much that hurt because I had personally gone through it, been on the other side. And so I knew that, deeply believed that I didn't owe the rest of my life to Craig, but that I did owe him honesty, right? That's what we had healed from, like that. So I told him as soon as I knew. And that was, wow, that was brutal and beautiful, actually. And not too long after that, I finally, months after we had met each other in Chicago, I flew to LA to like be with her for the first time. And yeah, oh my God, like I had never even kissed a girl. Like I had and here we had both blown up our entire, because first of all, I knew that I had to leave Craig, like even if it didn't work out with Abby, because it was more of like the chances of it working out with Abby long term were zero. We hadn't even been alone together. Okay. So it was more like, okay, I can't pretend that this thing in my marriage is love anymore, because now I know what it is. So now I for sure can't pretend that this is it. So I have to leave regardless of whatever happens with Abby. So thank God for that. It wasn't that huge pressure. But yeah, I flew to her. She was getting some award for her retirement from soccer. She's doing an ESPYs thing that night. And I just like flew to LA, and oh my God, I was like in the airplane, and I got on the airplane in my pajamas, but then I was like wanting to look so perfect when I got to the hotel. So I brought, like, this is what, I don't know if you remember the last version of me, but I used to wear like 6-foot-long eyelashes and like 12 pounds of makeup, and I had like Botox. I mean, I had all the things. Okay. So I brought my entire, I don't know, like military, like boxes full of beauty supplies and clothes onto the plane, including straighteners, hair dryers. And I went into the freaking bathroom, and poor people, I stayed in there for like 20 minutes, just transforming myself into this like other person. And I came out of the bathroom and sat down, and the sweet lady next to me who I had been talking to said, "If I go in the bathroom, will that happen to me?"
I want to fly on that airline. No, you'll probably just step on some urine on the floor that some guys left.
I think of that lady probably once a week and giggle. So yeah, that was so intense, Mia. Oh my God. It was the most exciting and beautiful day of my life. And I laugh about it, but like, it's just such a miracle to me because, you know, a lot of Love Warrior, I just didn't understand sex and I didn't understand love. Like a lot of Love Warrior is just me trying to figure out like, what is this thing that I never was in love before, you know, and I never really felt lost in sex. I never felt connected in sex. I always felt like sex was something I was performing, you know, like I knew like how I was supposed to move and the noises I was supposed to make. And I knew like what to do to make the other person think I was like enjoying it or whatever. But like, and I just felt like, oh, this is something I won't have in my life. Like whatever these other people are talking about, I won't have that, but that's okay because I have all these other things. So to be able to experience like real physical intimacy and get it for the first time was like the best day of my life.
Was it hard to navigate writing that sex scene?
Oh yeah, because Abby is like really private about sex. It's so precious. Like if I were talking, sometimes I bring it up on stage when we're talking together and she like dies. She just dies. So in a cute way. But that I knew, like I really was it incessantly. I knew there had to be that scene in that book because I wanted a reclamation of sex for myself, for every reader. I wanted to reclaim the beauty of sex. I wanted a gorgeous, you know, holy scene between two women to be in that book. It was so important to me. But I was so scared to show Abby. But I wrote it like I was like, I think she's gonna love this. Like I feel like it says everything without saying anything. Yes. I think there's a tension in it without like any detail. But still, I was so scared to show it to her, and she read it in front of me, and I wanted to die. I was just like sweat. You know my sweat. I was just sweating like I've never sweated before. Afterwards, she just giggled like she was 4 years old. Like she was like giggling. And I was like, is that good? She's like, I love it. I love it so much. So thank God. I was like, good, because I really don't want to cut that one.
No, I think that scene was important because last time we spoke and we were talking about Abby and I said, you know, when you met Abby and you felt all these feelings, like sometimes, you know, you meet and you connect with another woman and you think, wow, she's amazing. And it can feel a bit like love. And were you ever worried? And you were like, oh no, I knew this was not a friendship feeling.
No, I know friendship. This did not feel like friendship.
So like, I got a lot of female friends. This was not going to be one of those situations.
Yeah. I was never confused. I was never like, oh, this just feels like friendship.
Nope.
A lot was confusing, but that was not it.
Then, which is an interesting part of your book. There's a chapter called Questions, and you talk about being at a town hall sort of type event in the Midwest, and a woman, you know, you have a question and answer section, and a woman put her hand up, and you said she wore a sweatshirt with an American flag and the word grandma puffy painted onto it. Her hand shook a little as she held the mic. I loved her instantly. She said, "Hi, Glennon. I've been following your work for 10 years and I came here to ask you a question that I'm afraid to ask anyone else. I feel confused. My nephew is now my niece. I adore him. I'm sorry, her. My granddaughter took a boy to homecoming last year and a girl this year. And now you're gay too? I don't mean any offense. It's just, why is everybody so gay all of a sudden?"
Could you die?
I loved her so much.
Because do you know what everyone else is thinking in that audience? Why the hell is everyone so gay all of a sudden? Everybody's thinking that.
First Liz Gilbert, you know, hooks up with her best friend and falls in love. And now Glennon, like, what's going on? Is there like a contagion? Is this some like version of Corona, pre-Corona?
Right. It's so precious and honest. And I so desperately wish that we had more safe places to talk about that stuff, because if we could all just ask the thing without fear, then we would have wider perspectives because people could offer us their truths and their stories. What I told that woman is that I don't think that anybody's gayer all of a sudden, right? I think it's just that there's more freedom in the air for people to share who they really are. Like, people have always been 50 Shades of Gay, okay? Like, always and forever. People have been trans, people have been gay, it's just that there was so little room in the air. There was so little freedom. There was so little permission to see yourself on a spectrum, to, if you knew you were on a spectrum, to say it. When other people aren't out there, when you don't see yourself in anybody else, you think you're weird and crazy and you keep it to yourself and you slowly die. And many, many, many gay people and trans people did die and do die because they don't feel free to show themselves. But, about the contagion thing, I do not think that gayness is contagious, but I do think that freedom is contagious, right?
I've used that line many times because I think that young people understand this. And they don't even understand what anyone sort of Gen X and above is confused about.
They don't.
But Gen X and above not everyone, of course, but I hear this a lot where it's like, I just eye-rolling about this trend. Like, why is it so trendy all of a sudden to be gender non-binary or like, sexually fluid? Like, why can't – and that's part of taming, isn't it? That idea that everybody is in a container.
Yes. Oh, God, it's such an old way of thinking. I mean, this idea that we are all one thing or another, and that if we are one thing, we have to stay that thing forever, is in 10 years, we will look back on that and we will think, oh, my God, I can't believe we were so narrow. We were so narrow. All these things are fluid. Sexuality, gender, faith, they are all beautifully fluid. And we just don't like that. We don't like forces that we cannot contain, so we make containers for them, right? We take these fluid things and we hold out these glasses and we say, okay, I see sexuality, but that's scary, so just fit in one of these, gay or straight. I see that wild faith, and it's like, it's so confusing, I don't understand what it is, so just pick one of these containers, Christian or Muslim or right? Like, it's not, and then we do the best we can, it's like, the gay and straight containers aren't enough. So we're like, okay, we'll just add more. Okay, we'll add pan and we have like so many letters. I'm a gay activist and I'm so terrified to say all the letters. Like, I don't know if I'm leaving out a letter. I don't know if there's 29 letters now. And I think eventually we will stop adding glasses and we will just take the glasses system away.
Yeah.
There won't be glasses anymore, right? Everybody will understand that these things are fluid and we will no longer, this is one thing how full of grace I am for, different ideas and for different generations and the way people think. I can see all of that. But I will tell you that I find it absolutely unacceptable, and I will name it every single time, when people act as if they are being inconvenienced by somebody else telling them who they are.
Yeah.
Oh, you're trans. Oh my God, this is so annoying for me. I have to think harder. Like, you know what? Just think fucking harder. All right? Like, your inconvenience should not mean that somebody else has to slowly die inside. Like, our curiosity and openness, our refusal to be annoyed by other people who are different than us, our refusal to be annoyed when we have to rearrange the categories and files in our brain. We need to commit to curiosity when it comes to these things, with these ideas of sexuality and gender, which will continue changing. We need to commit to curiosity, and we need to commit to kindness and openness, because that saves lives. All right? The idea that you just said that I hear so much, this is so annoying. What, everybody's trans. Like, that kills people. That I will not have it. Like, that is a form of fear that then becomes a solid wall, that then becomes an us and them.
It's interesting, we're talking on the day that photos were posted by Adele, and the photo that's going around is now on its way to becoming the most liked photo ever on Instagram, and it shows Adele, the incredible multi-award winning singer, and she's lost a lot of weight. and she's really skinny now. And everyone likes that photo very, very much. She's getting a lot of validation for that photo. And one of the most insidious dirty pink bunnies is the way women are told that our bodies must be small and that we must look a certain way. And I know that this is one area where you have not attained that untamed status. Tell me about that, because I know that it still causes you anguish.
I'm tamed as hell about that. I am Minnie the lab. Is what I am. I am Minnie. I am not even Minnie. I am a chihuahua. Okay, I am like.
How funny that you just chose a very, very small dog.
Small one.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Labs take up too much space.
Yeah.
Okay. It is so maddening to me, Mia. I have really figured out some ways to stop believing that I have to be small in so many ways. You know, I've given up the idea that I have to be small in my career, small in my voice, small in my anger, small in my ambition. But this body thing, I am telling you, I mean, I've been struggling with this since I was 10. I became bulimic when I was 10. And there's something about the message that I have to stay small to like, I don't even know. I don't even know why. I don't know why. I know as a feminist leader, like it would be better for me not to be this small. Like I know that my wife would love for me to be rid of this. Like it has nothing to do with other people. It has nothing to do with the shape of my body. It has to do with this message that was ground into my bones from everywhere from the time I was born, that my worthiness as a human being is based on how tiny I am. And it gets worse. It gets better. I mean, I have decades where I think I'm doing pretty well. But I think when things are a little bit out of control, it gets worse. Abby and I call it getting weird. I get a little weird, which means I'm just like obsessing a little bit about food, about exercise, about my body.
It's like self-taming, isn't it?
Yes, it's self-taming. It's like being harassed by yourself.
Yeah.
It's like there's a nasty person who doesn't like me, and the caller is from inside the house. It's so infuriating, and it makes me so angry because I'm such a smart and powerful woman, and if I could get back all of those, you know, I think probably some of my bad days, 50% of my thoughts are about food and exercise and just obsessive about that.
Yeah.
And if I could get back that 50%, like the art I could make, the activism I could, okay, Mia, I'm so sorry. I have to go. I think we're running a little bit. It's 8:37. I'm so
shit.
sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. They're calling next one.
I understand.
Big TV show. Love you.
Thank you. Bye. Well, that was awkward. About halfway through that interview, I decided in my head that this interview is going to run long. And I thought, you know, we always make sure that these no-filter interviews are like a tight 40 or 50 minutes. But, you know, men, they have long podcasts. Dax Shepard and Osher and Will Anderson and Tim Ferriss, some of their podcasts and Sam Shepard, they go for like 2 hours or 3 hours. What podcast by a woman ever goes for that long? And I thought, damn it, I'm going to let this interview be untamed. I'm just going to keep talking and it's going to run long. Except for the fact that I hadn't read the email from my producer that said Glennon only has an hour and she has a hard stop because she's got another interview that's going live on TV. So poor Glennon, I went over our allotted time by 7 minutes and she had to pretty much hang up on me. So I emailed her afterwards and I explained what had happened. And I said, can we just grab a few more minutes just to round off the interview? She graciously agreed. And here's the rest of our conversation.
And it would have been fine, except that your like version of the Today Show was literally calling me. It was the morning show, and like this huge segment on it. I was like, shh.
I'm so sorry. That'll teach me to read my bloody emails. What I was about to ask you about to kind of bring it on home was this idea of gratitude and how gratitude is used as a way to tame women. Mm-hmm. You know, this idea that men are never told to be grateful. Men don't write in gratitude journals and hashtag gratitude on their posts. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a million different ways to look at gratitude. I mean, mandatory gratitude is hilarious, right? It's just the reverse of don't ask for more.
What's
I mean,
mandatory gratitude? Explain what mandatory gratitude is.
well, mandatory gratitude is the idea that we have, that women have, that only women have, that if we ever imagine more for ourselves, if we ever long for more, yearn for more, consider more, that we feel immediate shame,
Mm.
right? Because and danger, right? Because we think that we've been trained to believe that if we long for more, that means we're not grateful
Yeah.
enough. It's not subtle. I mean, the first story I ever learned was Eve. It was the first story I ever learned about being a woman was, all right, so God made Adam and everything was awesome while it was the two bros. And then this bitch shows up
With
and
all her desires.
she can't be just she can't just be grateful for what she has. She has to want more. So she goes for it and all hell breaks loose and all suffering is unleashed on the earth forever. Go with God, girls, right? This was literally the story, that this idea that the world will fall apart, our families will fall apart, our lives will fall apart, our companies will fall apart, our nation will fall apart if we aren't quiet and grateful for what we have, is just another way of keeping women in their place. We're expected to multitask in every other way on earth, but we can't simultaneously hold gratitude and also demand what we deserve, and you just start, it's something you really just start figuring out after you start questioning that self-doubt of, could it be possible that the fact that I can imagine more might mean that I was made for more?
Last question. One of my favorite morning meetings of recent times was when you talked about feedback and sorting the mail. And I found that as someone else who, I mean, all women get a lot of feedback. I found that analogy so helpful. Can you quickly tell that story or give that analogy about how you process feedback?
Yeah, I figured out like a few years ago that if I didn't figure out how to sort what I was going to let into my heart and mind and what I was going to reject, that I wasn't going to be able to do this job anymore. So I'm a super sensitive person and I take things to heart. And so what I figured out over, I guess 14 years of speaking publicly as a woman who dares to use her voice, is that when you are a woman who dares to use her voice, the world will have feelings about that. And the difference in when a man speaks or shows his work in the world tends to say, okay, is his work worthy? Right? But when a woman dares to show up and use her voice, the world says, is she worthy of having work? Right? That's it. It's two different questions. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is that most of the criticism has nothing to do with her work because they haven't gotten to the work yet. They're stuck on you and whether you are worthy of daring to show up, right? So what I would tell you quickly is that 95% of every piece of criticism or feedback I get has nothing to do with my work.
It's about your appearance, your voice, your lifestyle choices.
That's right. It's about my appearance, about my body, my appearance, my personality, and my relationships, because women are taught and tamed to believe that they are only worthy of showing up if their bodies are perfect, their appearance is perfect, if their relationships are perfect, and if their personality is perfect. Tragically, there's no such thing as a perfect appearance or a perfect relationship or a perfect personality, which is lovely because if we strive for those things, that means no women get to show up.
Yeah.
Perfect patriarchal goals for women. So so I just decided that it was a major energy saving exercise for me to reject every single piece of feedback that has anything to do with any of those things. And that leaves me with like 5%, which is about my work. I get to throw away half of that shit too, because half of it is really mean spirited. And I'm a grown ass woman and I don't take mean spirited feedback from anyone because I don't have to. So what that usually leaves me with is about 2 out of 100 pieces of feedback, which is usually about my activism and are 2 pieces of like well thought out, respectful, pieces of advice or feedback that are usually about my blind spots, my privilege, ways that I have voiced myself that leave people out. It stings, it's hard, and that's the stuff that I make sure I'm brave enough to bring in and to let change me.
If you read one book right now, let it be this one, Untamed. It really is so good, and it's true, and it's funny, and it's full of aha moments. Run, don't walk to your nearest bookshop or get online and order it. If you want to hear either of my first 2 No Filter interviews with Glennon, they're in our show notes, and make sure you're following her on Instagram. She does these Monday morning meetings where she was doing them every day through Corona, but she said something super wise about a week ago. She said, I always try to work out what I have to do so that I can keep showing up for my community. And she realised that doing it every day was just going to mean that she was going to quit it altogether. So she decided to go once a week because she knew that that was the best thing for her and for her community in the long term. Anyway, they're so funny and true, and it's like my meditation. Glennon's book, as I said, is called Untamed. Until then, friend, take care and lots of love.